Hey everyone, it's Craig from the University of Applied Research and Development, and this is part of our Veteran Stories, Difference Makers, and I'm delighted to have veteran Tiegs with us. Hi, good morning.
Hey, how you doing?
So fantastic to have you here, fellow podcaster. Good to have you. Thanks for giving us your time.
No, honored to be here. Thank you so much for the invite and consideration.
I'd love for you to share with us what was your motivation for joining the military when you first did.
I think most people, when they join the military, they're usually running towards something or away from something. I think for me, it was a combination of both. I had a very traumatic upbringing. I'm first generation American. My father immigrated here from Germany. My mother immigrated here from Holland. They both were alive. They were children during World War II. And I think they were both trying to come here to make a better life for themselves. My father had some just complete, like, he grew up in Berlin when it was completely, blown apart. So he had a lot of trauma. He saw his whole family
Wow.
killed,
Wow.
and so he struggled. He came to the United States to make a better life for himself. He ultimately joined the United States Army for a couple of years, but he really struggled. He met my mother. They had some commonalities because they were both from Europe, and they ultimately got married. But it wasn't a happy childhood. It ultimately turned into my mother had some mental health issues exacerbated by some physical and emotional abuse by my father. And I ultimately was adopted into a family situation that wasn't much better. And
Wow.
long story short, I knew that there was something greater for me. I had a drive in me to do something for myself. And I was
Hmm.
fascinated with the military, given my family history of what we did during World War II and just the United States in general. And I saw the military as a way of, you know what, there's a lot of positive role models over there. I can be part of something greater than myself. I can make a life for myself. If I could just get out of the situation, keep my grades up, keep my nose clean, I can get in the military and start a new life for myself. And that's ultimately what I did. And I did that through my mantra called do hard things. I realized that if I did hard things, if I got involved in running cross country and track and field, and that motivated me to keep my grades up, and it enabled me to bridge that gap into the military, and it really set the foundation for a good military successful career. And so that's ultimately the Cliff Notes version of how I got there.
I'm really itching to learn more about do hard things, but I'd just like to ask you to share just some of the experiences that you had in the military and how long you were in there.
So I'm currently serving. I joined the military as a brand new private. I started in the Missouri Army National Guard, so I was in the reservist. I started when I was 17, and then when I was in 1990, that was in 1995. 1997, I went on active duty as soon as I graduated high school, and I was a combat engineer. So combat engineers, we do explosives work, right? We're the engineers that blow things up, right? Put in landmines, things of that nature. So I was enlisted. I worked my way up through the ranks to sergeant first class, which is E7. And then I used that. I earned my degree, and I decided to go to officer candidate school, where I commissioned as an engineer officer. And now I'm currently a major, and I've been an officer for 12 years, and I'll be retiring next year. Some of my
Wow.
experiences: I've deployed to Bosnia. I've been deployed to Iraq in 2003. I've been in command of two organizations. I was the commander of the Engineer Basic Officer Leadership Course. I was commander of the Combat Training Company at Fort Leonard Wood that was responsible for um, basically all the instructors that manage the ranges and some of the training for all of the soldiers that come through Fort Leonard Wood. And the Engineer Basic Officer Leadership Course was basically, it's every engineer officer that comes into the Army they attend that course, and so I was responsible for both those courses.
Wow. And have you lived and traveled internationally as well with your family?
I have a little bit, but I've spent a majority of my career at Fort Leonard Wood. When I was married, uh, my ex-wife at the time had some health issues, and so they kept us in a position where she could receive her health care. And you can't do
Wow.
that when you're overseas and whatnot. So I've had a kind of a unique career where I was in one spot for a long time. But
Hmm.
I have been stationed in Hawaii. I was stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado. I've been here at Fort Leonard Wood. I was in St. Louis for a bit for recruiting, with just a couple tours overseas.
Okay. Now, I think I know the answer, but when you finish up, What's going to be your focus when you leave the military?
Well, I'm passionate about helping people. I'm a certified high performance coach. I became a certified high performance coach a year ago. I really enjoy helping people achieve their highest potential. I want to help veterans that are transitioning. And I just want to help people as a high performance coach. I help people not only just get focused and get things done. That's the science of achievement. How can we achieve more? But also, how can we enjoy the ride while we're doing it? I
Mm,
fell into the pitfall of I can get a lot of things done. I've always been a high performing officer. But what my biggest challenge was, I got to a point where I was absolutely miserable. And I got to a point where I was at the bottom and I wanted to just end it all, right? I had those thoughts dealing with some of the
mm,
traumas from my upbringing, dealing with some of the things
mm,
that my experiences from the Army, like so many veterans face. And I'm like, okay, how can I change my mindset and I started studying the highest performing people and the happiest people. And I started incorporating that into my life. And I become so passionate about that because I think there's such a need for that. And so that's what I'm doing now. So I started the podcast. I'm doing one-on-one coaching and group coaching. I'm just helping people get more done, stay focused on what matters, and live their fullest potential.
that's fantastic. And this is your website?
That's my website. Yes, sir.
And so, what sort of resources or services are you providing for people now? You're still in the military, but you're building your business as well. So, what sort of things are you engaging with people on right now that they can access through the website?
So right now I have a mastermind called The Forge. This would be like more like an entry level. If you're new to coaching, like if you're new to group coaching, you can connect with like-minded people. It's like a tribe and community of people. I bring in, I host basically a conversation each week. We have like a book of the month. And as a collective group, we talk about life. It's like a safe space to talk about like real issues. Like, hey, I'm struggling with my marriage right now. I'm struggling with my fitness. I'm struggling with my finances, and helping each other, help one another out. I also do individual coaching. I take people through, there's a couple different options, but I take people through the high performance curriculum, which does just that. How do we achieve more? How
Hmm.
do we focus on what matters? There's 5 critical areas that we focus on. And I feel if you master these areas, you'll achieve more and you'll live a more focused life, a fulfilling
Hmm.
life. And that's energy. How do we modulate our overall physical well-being and our energy, manage stress and all those things? Productivity. Are we doing our life's work or are we doing just busy work? And how do we focus on the things that matter? Do we have
Hmm.
clarity with who we are? Like,
Hmm.
especially like transitioning veterans. It's like, okay, now that I take off the uniform, what's my next mission? And if you don't
Hmm.
have good clarity on who you want to be and what you want, it's going to be very easy for you to get off track. And the further you are away from your purpose, the more misery you have in your life. So I help people like
Hmm.
truly figure out what is it, who are you as a person, and what's your next mission. I help people gain more influence because you want people to support you. Or if you're leading your family or leading a team at work, you want people to support you and execute what you want them to do. Not manipulation, but influence, like in a positive way, right?
Yeah.
You want to influence your kids to be good adults and all those things. Um, and then finally, courage. How do we take bold action? How do we face fear? High performing people, it's not like the fear isn't there. They just look at fear a little bit differently and they
Right.
take action anyway. So if you can master those 5 areas, you'll get more done and you'll live a happier life.
Wow. Tell us about the mindset work that you're doing, and particularly around fear and facing fear.
Yeah, so I'm a big proponent of do hard things, right? Constantly developing fortitude, grit, taking bold action. And, you know, some of the aspects of this is you have to have a vision of what you want to achieve, and just realize that oftentimes these things as you're growing, it's scary. And that's normal.
Hmm.
Oftentimes the things that we truly fear, aside from like physical harm, is the judgment of other people and other people's
Right.
opinion. If we start this endeavor, I fail, will I lose my reputation? The
Right.
hardships that are involved with learning something new, if I enroll into your college, course, and how's it going to be like that? There's fear, right? I have to probably change my schedule. I'm going to have,
Mm,
work that I have to do. And sometimes it's the fear of the change because I can control what I'm currently doing. And so maybe there's some things I'm not happy with, but at least I know what I'm getting into versus wading into something new. Or if I do all the work maybe the grass isn't greener on the other side. I put in all the work, but my life isn't better. And those are usually the fears that hold us up and keep us
Mm,
from actually achieving. And what we need to do is realize you need to do an inventory of these things. And sometimes you just need to talk these through with someone that has some experience, right? That's why what I do
yes.
as a coach is talk through these things, because a lot of your fears are really just BS. They're your subconscious. They're things that have happened to you. They're limiting
Right.
beliefs. And then you truly identify like what truly is the fear. In the military, when we're doing military planning, we look at when we're analyzing the enemy, because when we're looking at the enemy, we're doing a mission. It's we're going to face some resistance. Well, what's the most dangerous course of action? What's the worst case scenario? Okay, that we call that the most dangerous course of action, and we need to be prepared and aware for that. But then we also look at, okay, like what's the most likely course of action? We have
Right.
identified what's the worst case scenario, but what's potentially really going to happen. And as a military, we plan for the most likely. We need to be prepared for the most dangerous, but through that
Right.
thinking, we can kind of hedge against those, but we put our emphasis on the most likely, and that reduces some of the, I don't know, maybe some of the true fear, some of the BS fears, the things that aren't happening that could hold us back. And it's taking that same mindset and applying it to your life. Like what's complete. It could happen, but it's so unrealistic. Versus like what's going to likely happen, and then you plan to address what could likely happen, and then what you realize is like a lot of these fears, they're not nearly as bad as you think they are, and then having a
Right.
sense of accountability to help you maneuver through it. Because high performing people, it's not like the fear goes away. It's just that you look at it a little bit differently, and then you plan accordingly to hedge against the things that could happen, and you take steps anyway. And as you develop competence in something, you're going to gain more confidence, because it's the competence loop.
Do you find that for veterans, maybe when they step out into civilian life, they might forget or discount all the incredible training and background and experiences that they've had in the military? Because it sounds like what you're saying is we've trained in this. Remember your training. I interviewed someone last night, Nyurka, and she's been in the military for a long time. And I said, "What's the one thing you would say?" And her last final thought was, "Remember your training."
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had this conversation a lot. We really downplay a lot of our skills and our abilities. We speak a
Right.
different language that doesn't necessarily translate to civilian sector, but there's a lot of things that we do that are equally as good, or if not better, you know.
Right.
And it all goes back to the training. All of the training, all the leadership, the wording might be different, but the frameworks are absolutely relevant. Like when you're going through and
Mm,
creating an op order, like that whole process of the military decision making process, like those frameworks work in your day to day life. Like when you go to buy a car, like you can go through the military decision making process, those steps, and make a good purchasing decision because of that. And so
right.
just remember your training. It's there. Don't discount it. It all works. Um, a lot of things that I bring up is like in the United States Army, we conduct after action reviews, and that's a principle that when I coach civilian leaders, it's something that a lot of people don't do very well. That we tend to do incredibly well, but we fail to apply that principle to our own life. And the people that do,
Right.
um, they have a leg up, and these principles absolutely work.
For civilians, the after action review, they may be familiar with that. If maybe they're in a medical profession, they might do the M&Ms with a review where something has gone wrong or well and try to find ways of improving practice. What are some of the principles of an after action review that civilians could use and understand?
Yeah, there's really four steps. When you have maybe you worked on a project and you came to project completion, and this you get the whole team together. And the number one principle is, especially if you're a leader of an organization, is it needs to be an environment where everyone has the opportunity to speak up. Okay, that's the fundamental difference in like our military versus like other militaries, is that we allow even the most junior, the privates, and everyone is on the same, because we're all trying to learn together. It's the only way that we get better, right? So it has to be a space where everyone has the opportunity to speak up. And there's really four things. It's what was supposed to happen, what was the intent, what was the outcome that we're trying to achieve, what actually happened, because every time that you try to start something like your plan, there's going to be deviations in your plan. Things are going to happen. What do we sustain? So what were the things that that went really well that we want to continue to improve upon or double down on or make sure that we continue? And then what are some areas of improvement without shaming anyone, without like, yelling at anyone like, hey, you screwed up and it would have been better if you did. It has to be an environment. The key is it has to be open dialogue where people feel comfortable and acknowledging like, hey, this is what I screwed up on, but giving them the opportunity, like, well, how can we fix that? And how can we, and then you take those notes, and this is key too. A lot of times we'll do these things, but then it's like, when you have a similar operation later, it's like you need to go back and reference these notes again so you can review them as part of the planning process. That's something that I've been in organizations, even within the military. We do the AARs really well, but we'll miss that the notes on that, and that's important to do. So you want to, as part of your next planning, find some after action review notes and review that so you can identify those things, because we tend to repeat ourselves, and if we don't address these things and have those considerations, we can make the same mistakes.
That's really great. So, Joe, just as we wrap up, what's the best way for people to get hold of you? With the show notes, we've got the link to your LinkedIn profile, and then on the screen we've got your website. Is it just one of those two things, or is there another way?
The website's probably the best way to get a hold of me, because I'll have all my links on there. I'm also, you can go to Do Hard Things Apparel. You can look up the Do Hard Things Nation. And I'm facilitating that as well. So, you see this logo here. We're going to be creating events. We're going to be creating workshops, and I bring my coaching in as part of that. But you can look out for those things, and that's how people can get in contact with me.
Fantastic. And just one final thought that you might have for a veteran who's maybe finding things challenging with the transition into civilian life. What would you say to them?
Get connected with other veterans that are going through that transition problem, or not problem, but that are facing through transition. Realize that, as I'm going through transition right now, I'm finding myself, it's exciting, but I'm also feel like I'm grieving something. I'm leaving a big part of myself. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've been doing this since I was 17, and I'm scared. I'm a high performance coach, and I'm scared, right? And you can do this alone, but you really need a team of people. I would recommend having a therapist, having a coach, getting connected with a community of people, and be vulnerable enough to lean on them and accept help, and just realize that this is a process that is significant. And you can go it alone, but that's just a harder way of doing it. And don't let your ego keep you from doing it the right way, because the question I always ask people is, who loses if you don't win? Right? Your family and your people around you are relying on you to be the best version of yourself. But having a team of people to support you enables you to do that better.
Jay, firstly, thank you for your service. And also thank you so much for giving us your time here today. Really appreciate your thoughts. Please don't go anywhere. Just as I wrap up, I'd love to chat with you just briefly after the podcast as well. So thank you, Jay, for your time.
Honored to be here. Thank you so much.
And for those of you watching, whether you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, whichever platform that you're watching this recording on, if you're a veteran or a member of the family of a veteran, our courses, our bachelor degrees and master's degrees are approved by the VA. So we'd love to help you gain the qualification that you want to help you move forward in your career goals if you need that. Thanks very much for joining us in our Veteran Stories Difference Makers, and here with Jay Tiegs, who is definitely a difference maker. We'll see you again on the next episode.